Industries that are hot, sectors set to outperform the market. That's what's here in Zacks Industry Rank Analysis. Well, Charles Rotblatt, our senior market analyst at Zacks.com, is the gentleman who puts this report all together for us. He takes a lot of pains every week to sift through different industries to find out where the bright spots are, where the bad spots are, the pitfalls that should be avoided. And this week is no exception. This week on your radar, the computer software companies. And you found an interesting little story here in this sector. This is actually a bright spot, isn't it?
It is, and it's interesting. We are seeing analysts revise estimates up on several companies, and I did a little bit of digging because we're seeing the recession. As everybody knows, business spending is being curtailed. Layoffs are being announced seemingly on a daily basis. Yesterday, Tuesday afternoon, we had Alcoa announce massive layoffs.
Right.
But the one theme that seems to be occurring among the computer software companies that are they're actually having estimates raised on, and we're talking 2009, fiscal 2009, full calendar year 2009 earnings estimates revised higher, is that these are companies that are either providing some type of cost savings or some type of productivity enhancement. In other words, companies are seeing these companies and realizing that if we continue to invest in these companies' products, we can actually cut costs elsewhere and possibly improve our market share and our revenue stream going forward. So there's a legitimate reason. It's something we're really seeing across the board. Companies that can provide something to customers that's needed seem to be doing okay in this environment. It's the stuff where people kind of look at and say, well, it's a nice expense, but I really don't need to spend money on it right now. Or in a case where people just can't get the credit to pay for those items, that's where we're really seeing the suffering. So it's definitely a mix. And I think investors need to look at this group and really even other groups and ask themselves, is this company producing something that A, somebody needs, or B, that will help another customer save money or become more efficient?
Well, if we want to put it into context for the investor, you're talking about companies that offer such products as, and you don't have to mention brand names, but just products that do what?
Well, a good example, I'll mention one a lot of people have heard of, Red Hat, ticker RHT. It's probably the largest stock I talk about in this week's commentary. They provide Linux platforms, open source platforms. And I'm not a techie, I'm not a system administrator, but a lot of people believe open source systems are more cost efficient than a Windows or a Unix-based system. As a result, Red Hat appears to be gaining market share and actually continues to see revenues grow. Had some very strong numbers this past quarter. And so that's an example. I also talk about a company called ARST, which provides compliance and security software to businesses, to government agencies. They actually serve the financial services sector, and obviously that sector itself is going through consolidation, a lot of hard times. But this is a case where companies really need their software. They really provide the compliance standpoint. And when you're looking at what's going on, and even with the Bernie Madoff scenario, these companies realize they need to continue to spend to have the compliance to make sure records are secured. Obviously, the last thing any company wants is a massive lawsuit because they didn't do their due diligence and really didn't treat customer records with the care that they need to be treated with. So again, here's an example of one company, that Red Hat, that provides customers with an ability to save money. Another company which provides companies with the ability to improve efficiency and really gives them something that they actually need. And I talk about several other companies that also in this week's commentary where some I actually just mentioned by name, but kind of gives investors an idea of where to look and possibly some ideas of ways they can use to rebuild their portfolio, at the same time possibly seek out a little bit of growth.
So companies, from what we're telling from these manufacturers, the companies out there in business surviving through this time, if they have a good business reason, legitimate business reason to buy one of these products that one of these companies make, they will be spending on that. It may be cautious spending, but some spending.
Yeah, and a lot of these companies did say visibility is tough, and so it's not to say these companies are completely immune from the recession, but we are seeing earnings estimates being revised upwards, and considering that we're seeing only about one earnings estimate raised for about every 9 or 10 estimates being cut, it's pretty significant when you see an industry group with several companies that have positive estimate revisions. Even if it's only 1 or 2 estimate revisions per company, it's still a very bullish sign, and we're not seeing that in very many industries.
You know, we talked late last year about once the economy begins to turn around, technology will be the driving force behind the recovery. It will be the sector that pulls the economy out of recovery. Is this maybe some confirmation of that?
Yeah, well, I think so, and it's proof that when we look at the recession, when we look really coming out ahead, maybe second half 2009, maybe 2010, obviously we don't know the timing of it, but as companies start to sense that the credit standards have loosened, that they do see brighter skies ahead, they're going to start looking for ways, how can we start driving our revenues, how can we start gaining market share without necessarily investing in new labor and really not doing massive expansions. And one of the ways you can do is invest in technology. Certainly there's some projects that are just being put off right now because companies are trying to conserve cash, but these are projects that, 2-3 years down the line that can definitely help the bottom line, and that's one of the areas where we would see technology being spent on some of these companies not only trying to increase market share, but some projects that have just been put on hold. A lot of times a technological solution is really the best way to get that project moving in the right direction.
As long as we're talking about technology, can you give us a couple of areas that maybe are not working in tech?
Yeah, I think one of the areas of the technology sector that people should continue to avoid is the whole semiconductor sector. We've seen estimates being cut on your semiconductor equipment companies. These are the companies that make the machines to actually produce chips, companies like Lam Research, Novellus. We're seeing analysts actually cut estimates on those companies, and certainly when we look at the entire semiconductor sector, we had Micron Technology recently come out a few weeks ago with some very bearish numbers. We're seeing prices for chips really drop across the board. Continues to be a glut of inventory, and certainly anyone who walks into a Best Buy, walks into a Walmart, any of those electronic stores know prices are continuing to drop, and they can pretty much have their way in terms of trying to negotiate down prices or at least get a package deal. And part of what's driving those lower prices is really the semiconductors. So that's an area I would continue to stay away from. People are continuing to try to pick a bottom, much like the housing, and it's not happening. And I think it's something that people long term, there will always be demands for chips, but I think there's just much better sectors for people to look at than semiconductors.
All right. Do you own any of the companies that you mentioned here?
No, I do not.
And if you would like to see a text version of Charles' most recent industry rank piece, the one that we started talking about here, the one that deals with the software companies, all you need to do is go to Zacks.com, and scroll down the page till you get to the headline, the link that'll take you right to that text piece. With Charles Rotblatt, I'm Terry Ruffalo.